Could Neal Brown actually leave West Virginia and go to UMass? That's right. I said it. UMass, one of the worst football programs in America. Well, the chances are slim, but there is a chance. There is a chance. Now, most of you have probably already heard this story by now, but I have not given my thoughts on it yet. Welcome into this live edition of Couz's Corner. Obviously, we're going to be talking about the Neal Brown and UMass story, the rumors circulating that he could be a candidate for the job. I'll tell you whether or not I think it's feasible or not, ways that it could potentially work, and why it may not work. And then the second half of the show, we're going to talk about the college football playoff rankings that came out tonight. Just a little while before I came on the air, about an hour or so before I came on the air. I'll give you my thoughts on where the Big 12 teams were ranked, whether I thought it was fair or unfair. Now, let's go ahead and give a shout out real quick to those who are already in the chat. I've got Matthew Goldsmith, Eric Ferguson, Shaq, who's a VIP channel member. He says, let's make America great again. I mean, let's make Mountaineer football great again and send Neal Brown to UMass. We got Justin Graham, JDK, Aiden's Collectibles. What's up, Aiden's Collectibles? And then we got Joe Evans as well. And if you're watching this over on X, please be sure to come over to my YouTube channel once the show's over. Check out my previous shows and my previous uploaded videos. And please subscribe while you're there. And before we get too far along into the show, I have to give a shout out to my channel sponsor, Cats, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner. So I will be back right after this. Since 1931, the attorneys at Cats, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner have been the voice for victims who have suffered serious injury or death. They have a fierce passion for truth and justice and a sincere compassion for those who have been wronged by others. Whether you have been in a car accident or fighting with an insurance company, or you or a loved one has suffered serious injury or death due to medical negligence, we will ensure your voice is heard loud and clear. Cats, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner will ensure there is justice for all West Virginians, because we are your lawyer, your voice. Visit us at yourlawyeryourvoice.com. What is up? Welcome into this live edition of Couz's Corner. Bell yourself up to the bar and let me pour you out this shot of top shelf college football news and analysis. Let's go ahead and kick off and talk about the main topic of tonight's show, and that is Neal Brown being rumored for the UMass job. First, I'm going to read a little bit from an article by Garrett Coate over at the Daily Hampshire Gazette. It says, and obviously, as I mentioned early in the show, UMass fired their coach. His name was Don Brown. He was in, I think, his third year with the program, and I think he had a record of like 6-28 or something, a very bad record, but he was a legend at UMass. I don't know the whole history, but I was listening to a Spaces last night hosted by some UMass people, and apparently the guy was a legend at UMass, and a lot of fans are not happy that they fired him in the middle of the season like this. So not a good look for UMass in that regard. But the main topic of this show is Neal Brown's connection. So let's get on with this article here. Garrett Coate of the Daily Hampshire Gazette says another top choice is Neal Brown, the current head coach at West Virginia, where he has gone 36-34 and won 2 bowl games since taking over in 2019. Brown played wide receiver at UMass in the early 2000s before joining the Minutemen staff as the tight ends coach. UMass Chancellor Javier Reyes crossed paths and was very involved with Neal Brown at West Virginia, and the Paul Gorham Auditorium inside of the Martin Jacobson Football Performance Center was donated by Neal Brown and his wife, Brooke. So he does have connections. He graduated. He went to school there, apparently graduated from there, played football there, and apparently has even made some donations to the program. And he does know the chancellor there, which I'll get into a little bit more in a minute. Another article on the topic over at the Athletic mentioned Neal Brown, and here's what they had to say in that article. Said West Virginia head coach Neal Brown would not leave Morgantown for UMass, but if the Mountaineers make a change and Brown becomes available, maybe this could be a fit. Brown played at UMass for 2 years and spent a year on staff. He went 35-16 at as Troy's head coach, and he's 36-34 at West Virginia right now. So the Athletic also talking about Brown being a candidate. Now, the Spaces that I was on last night, hosted by someone named a Twitter account called Curry Hicks Sage. He He seems to be well connected in the college sports space, especially when it comes to college basketball. He is a UMass fan, follows UMass sports very closely, and does seem, or at least claim to have some sources. And according to him, and his source, Neal Brown, is not interested in this job, and it would make sense that he's not interested, right? First and foremost, he would have to take a massive, massive pay cut for that job. Right now, he's making right around $4 million a year at West Virginia. The coach that they just fired was at UMass was making, I think, around $800,000, something like that. But according to what I read, they may be willing to pay the new coach up to $1 million. I don't think that's going to cut it. Why would you leave West Virginia making $4 million to go to UMass and make $1 million? Again, just like was mentioned in the articles I read, or the one in The Athletic anyway, the only way that makes any sense is if West Virginia fired Brown. At least on the surface, that's the only way it makes sense. I'll talk a little bit in a minute about how maybe there's a way around that. So I don't see Neal Brown leaving West Virginia on his own. And I've seen people say, well, if he's respectful or wants to do the right thing, he would step down at West Virginia. Why in the world would you step down and walk away from a $4 million paycheck when you don't have to? Unless his family is just totally miserable and wants out of there so badly, it wouldn't make any sense. Why would you leave $4 million sitting on the table? And not only that, you would have to pay the school a buyout if you leave. So why would you not only leave money on the table, but cost yourself money by leaving a job? That wouldn't make any sense. I don't know of many people on this planet that would be willing to do something like that, to be honest with you. So I don't think that's an option. I don't think Neal Brown's just going to walk away from West Virginia for this job. Now, is it possible that West Virginia fires Neal Brown? It is possible, but I don't think we need to get our hopes up there and the expectations up, because I don't think it's going to happen. I really don't. I just don't, maybe if they lose the next 2 games, maybe they will. But even then, they may not. West Virginia does not like to fire coaches, especially when there's so much at stake financially. And they will be on the hook for about $7-8 million, somewhere in that ballpark, maybe more, if they fire Neal Brown. And I'm not sure they can afford it, at least according to what I'm hearing, behind the, from sources I have, people reaching out to me. Also, with Neal Brown, as someone who's very competitive, would he want to take a step back from a Power 4 program all the way down to UMass, who's right now an independent, but getting ready to go into the MAC next year? Would you want to take that big of a step back, going basically from a Power 4 league to one of the bottom tier teams in the entire FBS? It's a huge step back. It'd be potentially a huge hit to the ego there. And I see a comment there from well-respected media source on X saying it will cost the university more not to fire him, and that's very possible. It's very possible, and I've talked about that in previous videos. I'm sure Ren Baker or someone has done an analysis of what they would lose by keeping him on in ticket sales, merch sales, potentially even some TV revenue stuff. I'm not sure if any of it's tied to viewership numbers or not, but it definitely could impact them long term if the fan base checks out, mentally checks out, even physically checks out as far as not attending games. So there will be financial ramifications if they keep them, but those might not be noticeable, maybe, as a word that comes to mind, until down the road, where as the buyout would also be more immediate. Now, they can spread the buyout over time. It would be spread out just like his contract is, so it wouldn't have to be paid all up front. But that being said, they would have to start paying it, pretty much immediately. So they'd still be on the hook for the money. Yes, Chris, I did see the comments by Caridi, and he's absolutely right. That's also what 24/7 Sports wrote as well. West Virginia is near the bottom of the Big 12 in NIL money. That is correct. And that hasn't helped Neal's situation. But I don't want to use that as an excuse, because there are other coaches in the Big 12 with about the same or maybe even less money, meaning Iowa State being the first example, and they're finding ways to win games. So, by the way, I want to give a shout out to Crispy. Crispy, thank you. I don't know how to pronounce the end of your name. Crispy Yo-O. I don't know how. Crispy Y0_0. Thank you for becoming a paid VIP member on the channel. You will now get access to my random member shout-outs that I do in videos. You also will get first dibs on comments in live streams, and you will get early access to some videos that I put out on occasion. And he also left a super chat. Thank you for the $5 super chat. He says, do you think anyone will take him as head coach after seeing his performance at WVU? UMass would, because UMass is a lower level team. They would probably be happy with a 500 record at UMass, to be honest. They don't have the same level of expectations that West Virginia has. And Neal Brown has actually shown he can win at that level. He did well at Troy, which is even really a level up from UMass right now. He won at Troy, was very successful at Troy. I don't think Neal Brown necessarily is a terrible football coach. I just don't think he's a good coach at West Virginia. For whatever reason, it's just not worked. It's not a good fit. It's not working for whatever reason. And I think it would be best for both parties, to be honest, to part ways. But nobody wants to be on the hook for the money that it's going to cost, right? Whether it's Brown walking away or West Virginia. And Brown would have to have another job to go to that pays him, more than $1 million, I would imagine. Now, I did hear Curry Hicks on his spaces last night talk about how he's hearing that maybe with this new chancellor, Reyes, that I mentioned earlier, maybe he's willing to spend a lot more money than previous chancellors did, and maybe they're willing to spend up to $2.5 million. He doesn't think they will, but it's possible. So maybe that happens. And maybe would that still be enough to entice Neal to leave? I don't know, man. You'd still be getting your pay cut in about half. So I just still don't know that it makes any sense. Now, here's where I'm going to make an argument to why it could work, and they could make it work. If Wren Baker and Neal Brown sat down and talk about it, like two grown men, two adults, and they'd come to an agreement of some sort. Maybe Wren says, okay, here's what we're going to do, Neal. If let's just say Neal knows that has a really good chance at this UMass job, right? Maybe he wants to go. That's Jeff, that's exactly what I'm getting ready to talk about, man. Great timing. Jeff Barnes. Maybe they sit down and they say, listen, this isn't working. The fans are not happy. The donors aren't happy. The administration's probably not happy. There's a chance Neal and his wife, Brooke, may not be happy. I mean, there's billboards up wanting him fired. It's not a good situation. So maybe they sit down, cooler heads prevail, and they say, look, let's come to an agreement. Neal, we will allow you to resign. We won't fire you, but yet we will still give you a percentage of your buyout. Maybe they pay, instead of making Neal pay West Virginia pays Neal. Let's say UMass is willing to pay Neal $2 million a year. Okay. Just hypothetically. And West Virginia says, okay, we will pay you $2 million buyout. And that will all be offset, a $2 million a year buyout versus the $4 million a year that we're promised to pay you now. Or actually, I think it's down to $3 million now. But nonetheless, they come to some form of agreement. $1.5 million, $2 million a year, whatever. Pay him a portion of his buyout. He walks away. He goes and gets the UMass job, makes another $1.5 million, $2 million a year there. West Virginia still pays him a little bit. But it goes down that he resigned. He wasn't fired. His reputation still intact. Yes, West Virginia still owes him some money, but it's whittled down to a much smaller amount. They then have a little bit of money or more money available to them to go get another coach. Hopefully everybody's happy. Or, they come to some form of agreement. Again, that's just an example. I don't see West Virginia offering to pay him to leave. But, there's got to be some way that can come to some form of an agreement. And come to some sort. I mean, they were able to do that with his contract extension this past summer. We got Kurt Hurley in the house, who is part of the Wolf Pack. For those of you who don't know who the Wolf Pack is, they are the ones responsible for the Fire Neal Brown billboards. Sorry, I got to take a drink here. But anyway, they've got it. Maybe they could come to some kind of settlement agreement. And another thing that might make the job attractive for Neal, I mentioned Javier Reyes, the chancellor at UMass. He actually taught. He was an economics professor at West Virginia University. That's right. And he was also the dean over the business division. Now, I'm not sure how close he and Neal are. They may not know each other that well, but anyone who follows West Virginia football closely, you've probably heard of the fifth quarter program. It's a program that Neal Brown implemented when he got there. It's where some of the football players who are, I guess, pursuing business degrees or interested in business join what they call the fifth quarter program. And they get to do like some business internships and things like that. They get to travel overseas. It's something that helps these players out for when their playing days are over. And it's all done as part of the John Chambers School of Business. Well, Reyes was over that when Neal Brown came to West Virginia. So I'm sure there had to be some communication between those two, and they had to develop some form of a working relationship. So maybe if that relationship is good enough, maybe Neal wants to go work for Reyes. Maybe he's willing to take a pay cut just to be happier, just to get away from West Virginia, get away from the stress, get away from the billboards, get away from all the other stuff that comes with this job, especially right now. Maybe he walks away. Maybe the money is, the pay cut is worth it for them to live a less stressful life. I don't know. That's probably a stretch that'll happen, because not many human beings would walk away from $2 or $3 million a year over a 3-year period. So it's probably not happening. But you never know. We've seen weird things happen before. We've seen a lot of coaches who are not happy being head coaches in today's landscape that go off to be coordinators. Maybe Neal doesn't want to do that, but he wants to be a head coach at a lower level. I don't know. There are a lot of things that could happen. The timing to me seems a bit odd for UMass to do what they just did. So maybe there have been some communications behind the scenes, and Neal has shown interest in that job, through third parties, through his agent or something. And maybe they've been able to come up with enough money to get him there. Not $4 million, of course, but maybe it's enough, So anyway, just throwing out ideas there, just to give you an idea of Reyes, the chancellor there, and his time at West Virginia. I found his bio online, and it said, this is actually his resume. It looks like it says, he was Milan Pushkar, Dean of the John Chambers College of Business and Economics at WVU from the summer of 2016 to the summer of 2021. Then he got a job as the vice president for Startup West Virginia from the fall of, carries the responsibility to lead and coordinate campus-wide initiatives that pertain to the analysis, implementation, and impact of efforts related to the innovation economy and the economic development of the state of West Virginia. And there's a lot more to that, but so he was in that role for about 3 years. So he was at West Virginia and of course that overlapped with his dean position, but he was there for about 5 years. And 3 of that was during Neal Brown's tenure as well. So there is some overlap there. And, if Neal Brown and his wife have made donations to that program, then that must mean that it means a lot to him. He had his playing career there, at least half of it, and he got his coaching start there as well. So I'm sure UMass is close to his heart. And I did see somebody in the chat say they can't see that Neal Brown, the hillbilly in UMass, but he was there. He was there. Shaq, who's been a VIP member for 1 month. Shaq says, I'm making my own billboard. Fire Neal Brown. I like it, man. I like it. Let me see. Thank you for your membership, Shaq, for the 1 month. Let me see if we have any other comments from VIP members here that I might have missed. Let me see. Jeff Ruff in the house says no future employer is going to talk to him if he holds WVU to that full buyout. It's a great point. I'm sure that could come to some kind of negotiation. Neal is a Mike caliber coach. And WV Fan 13 says, Crispy, of course, he would be hired by a mid-level school. Yeah, mid-level school would love to have him. From most of the Utah fans, or I'm sorry, UMass fans that were on that Spaces last night seem to love the idea of Neal Brown coming. I don't think all of them do, but I think most of them would love to have him there because they understand what they are. They know they're not a Power 4 school. They know that their program has struggled, and they know that Neal Brown would probably succeed at a school like UMass. And they have, UMass has more, from what I've read about them, they have more resources than most schools in their predicament right now, and may come into the MAC conference already with more resources than most of the schools they're going to be playing against. I agree with you, Locked On West Virginia, which is Mountaineer Paul, by the way, but that wasn't me saying it. That was somebody else. But I mean, he spent 2 years at UMass, and he's been there. He knows the area. So I don't see why he wouldn't want to go back. Potentially. Kurt Hurley says, fire Neal from the Wolfpack. Thank you for the $2 donation, Kurt. I appreciate it. And again, he is part of the Wolfpack. And, while I may not agree with everything you guys are doing, I totally respect it. And I do agree with your opinion. And obviously your opinion is always welcome here, as long as it's respectful. And then Locked On West Virginia says Frank Martin is from Detroit, Michigan. Yeah. And that's another thing that was mentioned. I think on that Spaces last night is, when they went for Frank Martin, they went for a big name. They got it. And they could do the same here with a football coach. And this is the AD that's in charge of this hire. It's his third football coach hire. He has failed on the first two. He can't fail again. So he needs to get somebody in there that is definitely going to do the job, which means what? They may have to pay him a little more money to do it. So, again, this is not impossible. Is it likely? No. But I don't think it's impossible. We got a super chat here, a $4.99 super chat from WVU World. Thank you for that donation. He says 4 key home games, 4 opportunities, 4 blowout losses. To not win one of those, not even compete in them, it's so sad. The spirit of WVU football is dead. Great comment, man. I couldn't agree more. Thank you for the donation. If you guys want to make a donation and get your comment highlighted and lead the conversation in the direction you want to take it, feel free to hit the $ near the chat box, and it'll do that. Jackson Clark, who's also a VIP member, says apparently Sydney Shaw got thrown out of the WVU women's game for throwing a punch earlier. Uh-oh. That's not good. How's that game going, by the way? I haven't but I haven't had a chance to watch it because I was getting ready for this. Shaq says, yes, sir. Appreciate helping out the channel. I'm behind in the video as per usual. It's all right, man. No problems. You can catch the rest. Martinsburg's coach could do better. I just did a UCF preview, and hold on, I missed it. Image we used was of Brown and Gus sitting on a burning couch. That's interesting. That's funny. Jackson Clark says they're rolling. Okay, good. I was hoping they would. What's up, football? Talking football, JJ Kitchen. He says, I'd be shocked if Neal Brown takes the UMass job. He's better off taking the buyout after getting fired and then looking for a job. WVU needs to fire him, in my opinion. Plenty of candidates who would fit WVU. I agree. The two big holdups for us, JJ, number one is the buyout. West Virginia's not rolling in money compared to some of these other schools, and they would owe him about $8 or $9 million. And then two, Gordon Gee is a lame duck president. He's retiring in June. So do you want to hire a new football coach 6 months before you hire a new president, and your new president come in and they don't get a chance, they don't get a say in the new coach? I think that might also be an issue. And not to mention, Gordon Gee loves Neal Brown. They're really close from what I hear. And Gordon Gee does not want to fire Neal Brown, I don't believe. Now, will he give Wren the flexibility to do it anyway? Yet to be determined. I have heard through the grapevine that Wren is doing a presentation for the board this week. So there may, maybe something will come of that. Who knows? We'll see. Yep, JD. Paul and I actually were texting. We might have a collaboration on forthcoming here soon. James, I did see the tweet. I have not read the article yet. But I did actually reference that Athletic article earlier in the show. But thank you for hopping on, brother. JJ, I disagree. You know, Jeff Ruff, man, you crack me up. But I don't necessarily agree with those reasons that West Virginia has, but those are the reasons that have been given by some in the media and others. And to be honest, it does kind of make sense. And yeah, hopefully Wren can rally the troops. You know, there's some stuff out there that Wren's not happy right now, but you know, we'll see. You know, at the end of the day, he has to answer to someone too, and that's Gordon Gee, and that's the Board of Regents, or Board of Governors. I did, James. Absolutely. Thanks for hopping in, brother. I did not read the article, but I did see the tweet. Waiting to get fired in order to take the UMass job would be a really bad look. Yeah, he's not, like I said, if he doesn't get fired now, it would be next year. And by then the job's going to be open. I mean, they can't wait that long to fill it. So, and I'm sure there are a lot of other candidates for that job. All right. Now I'm going to switch over to the next topic of the show, which is talking about the college football playoff. But before I do that, I want to give a quick shout out to my channel, my other channel sponsor, BetUS Online Sportsbook. If you are looking for a new sportsbook, look no further than our friends over at BetUS. Right now, they have an offer where you get 150% sign-up bonus on your very first deposit, or 150% sign-up bonus on your very first deposit with the promo code YouTube150, and you get 125% bonus on your next two deposits up to $2,000. Again, promo code YouTube150 get you 150% sign-up bonus, and then 125% on your next two with promo code YouTube150. You must be 18 years of age, and make sure you please play responsibly. Now, let's get over to the next topic of the show, which is the CFP rankings. Now, those were on tonight. They revealed those at about 7 o'clock. And here are the rankings. I'll put them on the screen. Hope y'all can see those. See, let me enlarge it a little, and I'm going to scroll so that the banner doesn't hide it. Let me see. Yep, that's better. All right. And like I said, I'll scroll so the banner doesn't hide it all. But as you can see, you know, Oregon is 1, Ohio State 2, Texas 3, Penn State 4, Indiana 5, Notre Dame 6, Alabama 7, Miami 8, Ole Miss, Georgia, Tennessee, Boise State round out the top 12. Who did you not see in there? Anyone from the Big 12. The highest ranked Big 12 team comes in at 14, and that's BYU. Even SMU, who BYU beat, is ahead of them. Make that make sense. Then you have Texas A&M. Colorado is the next Big 12 team. The next, you don't go down to, you don't get another Big 12 team until you get a 21 with Arizona State, and Iowa State is at 22. And then you have Missouri, UNLV, Illinois rounding out the top 25 there. And then obviously you had Tulane, Army, South Carolina, Clemson, all in there as well. So interesting rankings. I didn't have an issue with most of those, to be honest with you. I thought most of them were fair. The ones I took issue with were, like I said, SMU being ranked ahead of BYU and Boise State being ahead. I'm not saying Boise State doesn't deserve to be in the top 12, but Boise State has one loss. And yes, it was to Oregon, who's the number 1 team, and it was a close game. I understand that. And I understand BYU's loss was to Kansas. So it's not a good loss. But when you look at their wins, BYU has wins over SMU, who's ranked. They have a win over Kansas State, who was ranked at the time they beat them. But when you look at Boise State's wins, I mean, most of them are in the Mountain West Conference. You can't tell me that the Mountain West is a tougher conference than the Big 12. So how can they justify putting Boise State 2 spots ahead of BYU? Now, if BYU continues to win out and they go win the Big 12, then they can get in the playoff, right? More than likely. It's not a guarantee, but they probably would. As of right now, they would be the 12 seed in the playoff because they would be the 5th highest ranked conference champion. You would have Oregon as the 1 seed, Texas as the 2 seed, Miami is the 3 seed, Boise State is the 4, and then you would have BYU as the 5. As a matter of fact, I'll go ahead and share the bracket with you as well. Make sure you can see that. Yep, okay, you can see it. Because the seeding is different than ranking. Seeding is because the top 4 seeds, top 4 conference champions get the top 4 seeds. The 4 highest rated conference champions, I should say, get the top 4 seeds and a bye in the first round. And like I said, you've got Oregon, who's right now, as of today, would be the Big Ten champ. 2 would be your SEC champion, Texas. 3 would be Miami, who right now, even though they're not ahead in the ACC standings right now, they are the highest ranked ACC team, so they have them in at 3 seed, and then Boise State 4, like I said. But here's where I have an issue with. I don't understand how you can have Texas. I'm just going to pull up Texas's schedule right now. How can you have Texas sitting there at 3 with I mean, do they even have a quality win on their schedule? They play Kentucky this week. They're huge favorites in that game. They're 9-1. Their record is 9-1. They have wins over Colorado State, Michigan, who ended up not being very good, UTSA, UL Monroe, Mississippi State, who's the worst team in the SEC. I think they have 2 wins this year, maybe 3. They beat Oklahoma, but Oklahoma's turned out not to be very good. They lost to Georgia by 15 points. They beat Vanderbilt by 3 points. That's their best win right now is Vanderbilt. They beat Florida and Arkansas. So their best win is against Vanderbilt, who is currently ranked. They're currently not ranked at all. So how can they justify having them at 3 over a lot of these other teams? I know a lot of people want to talk about Indiana's strength of schedule. They beat Michigan too, just like Texas did. Now they don't have a Vanderbilt on their schedule, I don't guess. If you want to say Vanderbilt's good, I just don't understand. And you've got Miami sitting there too. How do you have Miami as an 8 seed and BYU as a 14? Miami's loss was to Georgia Tech. Do you think Georgia Tech's that much better than Kansas? Their record says they're 2 games better, but I don't think they're 2 games better. Kansas right now is one of the hottest teams in college football. They've won 2 in a row, playing really good football right now. But when you look at Miami's schedule, I'm going to pull it up next. They're 9-1 as well, and here are their wins. Florida, they're a 500 football team. Florida A&M, Ball State, South Florida, Virginia Tech, and remember that was the controversial call at the end, and Virginia Tech's turned out not to be that good. Cal, Louisville, Florida State, Duke, then they lost to Georgia Tech. They don't have 1 ranked win on their schedule. Not 1. BYU has 2. Now, Kansas State's, again, I know Kansas, well, you could say 1 at least. They have 1, and that's SMU. Miami doesn't have any. Yet they're ranked 8th, and BYU's 14th. Somebody make it make sense to me. I don't know. They like to say that it's all about the eye test in some cases, but it's only about the eye test when it needs to fit their criteria and their agenda. Any other time, it's about what they've done. It's about their strength of record or strength of schedule or something else. And I know BYU hasn't looked great in a lot of their wins. But Miami lost. They won the Virginia Tech game in controversial fashion. They won the Cal game by 1 point in controversial fashion. They haven't exactly looked great either in some of their games. So I don't really buy that argument with that one. Now, at the end of the day, some of this will all shake out with wins and losses because some of these teams are going to be playing each other. I mean, for example, you got Notre Dame sitting here with the ranked 6 with the 8 seed. They got to play Army, who's undefeated. Now, it's possible Army knocks them off and knocks them out of the playoff. And then that allows teams like Tennessee, SMU to be in the top 12 potentially. You know, it's another thing. Tennessee beat Alabama. Alabama is there at the ranks number 7. So a lot of chaos, a lot of things that don't make a whole lot of sense about these, but hopefully it all comes out in Washington. Penn State, they're the number 4 ranked team. Yes, their only losses to Ohio State, but they haven't really beaten anybody either. And they've not been winning. They've not been blowing anybody out. They struggled to beat UCLA, who Indiana completely dog walked. So I don't know. Some of these rankings just don't make sense. And when you look at the Big 12 with Colorado sitting there at 16, followed by Arizona State and Iowa State at 21 and 22, and of course BYU at 14, I don't see any possible way for the Big 12 to get 2 teams in this thing. Because if Colorado goes on and wins out and beats BYU, they're probably going to get in barely, if they get in at all. I think they will, but they'll barely get in, and they're not going to get a bye more than likely, because if Boise State wins out, they'll still have Boise State ahead of them, because Colorado's going to have 2 losses on their schedule, on their resume. And BYU, you've seen they're already out of the top 12. If they lose again, there's no way they get back in it. If BYU wins out, maybe they move into the top 12 and get that buyback, that first round buyback, and get one of the top 4 seeds potentially, if they went out and end up beating someone like Colorado in the conference title game. But then that's going to put Colorado at 3 losses, and then they won't have a chance to get an at-large. So the Big 12 is getting 1 team in at the most, and there's actually a possibility, depending on how this thing plays out, they could get left out completely. It's a long shot, but when you look at the bottom of the rankings, you have teams like Tulane, who's sitting there at 20. Is it? And Colorado's only a few spots ahead of them at 16. If I don't know, man, there's got Arizona State and Iowa State at 21 and 22. If one of them ends up winning the league with 2 losses, and Tulane wins the American, does Tulane pass them? Does Army pull off an upset over Notre Dame and win their conference? And do they move ahead of the Big 12 champion in the standings? There is a scenario where the Big 12 gets 0 teams in the college football playoff. Again, it's a long shot, but man, and that would be absolute worst case scenario, but it is absolutely possible. And it sucks for our conference. But, we all talked about how there's going to be so much parity in this conference and in this league. That's the price you pay, because they're all beating each other up and knocking each other out of the playoffs. Now, let me get to some super chats here. I've got Crispy with another super chat. Thank you for that. It says, do you think that media value and bias is contributing to the peculiar CFP rankings, especially top 10? Crispy, I want to say no, man. I don't want to accuse anybody of that. I just think, here's what I think. I think there is a subconscious bias maybe that exists when you see teams like Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, Ole Miss, because they do have that SEC logo, and I think there might be some subconscious bias there that they may not realize exists. And that's probably human nature, to be honest with you. Jeff Ruff says, if not for Prime, the Big 12 would get hosed. Probably. You're right. I'll be honest with you. I love my ball. I love my BYU fans out there. They're great people. My good friend Bomber over at College Football Mafia. Love the guy. Great friend of the show. But man, I think we would be better off as a league for Colorado to be a representative in that playoff. I think they're a better team. And B, I think that the attention that Coach Prime brings and that team brings, whether we like it or not, whether it's annoying or not, it's good for our conference. And that game is going to get more views than if BYU's in it, more than likely. There's going to be more casual fans tuning in to watch Colorado play than BYU play. It just is what it is. It's not fair, but that's just the way it is. And it's good for us to have them in that league, in our league, for that reason. And whether we like it or not, it's important for our conference for Colorado to be good. So I'm not going to say there's any blatant bias, but I do think there's probably some subconscious bias there that exists. That, just because those teams have a brand, they have a, when you hear Alabama, man, boom, you automatically going to assume they're one of the best teams in the country, right? When you hear Georgia, same thing. When you hear Texas, I mean, their brands just carry more weight. And there's not much we can do about that. That's why you're seeing what we're seeing with all the consolidation, with the SEC and the Big Ten trying to get more and more of these big brands. Just the way it is. They're going to leave the Big 12 and ACC in the dust when it comes to revenue. It's just the way it is. It's the way of the world. It's the way the college football world works. And at the end of the day, you know whose fault it really is? It's us, the fans, because we have driven it, because we love it so much. We put so much of our time, money, and resources into it. It's made it that big, and making those schools and those networks a lot of money. So they're trying to capitalize on it. We can complain all we want to about the SEC and Big Ten being greedy, but at the end of the day, it's capitalism, right, at its finest. Even though it's, I don't like the fact that capitalism has crept into college sports, because it's not supposed to be. But what do you expect, right? And even if you don't want to use the capitalism model, if you want to just say, their university's trying to earn as much money as they can to help with increase enrollment and all those other things, right? That's good for their school and university. At the end of the day, it still comes down to this, the almighty dollar. So Jeff Ruff says they can have the NFL D League, leave the college football to the rest of us. There you go, man. West Virginia's not in the red every year, Art. They've been in the red a few years. They just don't make as much money as a lot of the other schools do. But they're not necessarily in the red. They pretty much break even. Most athletic departments aren't for-profit institutions. They're supposed to spend what they earn, basically, to improve the program. The problem is West Virginia they can't spend as much because they don't make as much. So they have to pay their coaches less money. They have less money to put into the resources, like, suites and stadium upgrades and things like that occasionally. The last big upgrade they did, they had to go out and sell some bonds, and now that's put them in debt. So WV World with another super chat says, college football CFB would be better if P4 played 12 P4 games. Probably so, but that's never going to happen, because these schools want more home games. They want as many home games as possible. And when you play other P4 teams, you have to do home and home games, which means you have to go on the road for at least one of those. So, and again, it all comes down to money, right? They make more money when they have home games in their stadium. Matthew says, coming from an OU fan, I never wanted to leave the Big 12 in the first place. It would benefit us. Yeah. And, us fans aren't getting any of that money. It doesn't help us as fans for our schools to go make more money. Now, it might be more exciting to a degree, to get to play for, in Oklahoma's case, a lot of the fans I know were excited about playing in the SEC. But what do we benefit from it as fans, especially if our team struggles like Oklahoma's doing this year? Now, I don't think Oklahoma's going to struggle long term. Oklahoma will be back. They'll be fine. But they're struggling right now. And I personally didn't see that coming, to be honest. I thought they would do better. But we would rather see – I'm sure you would probably rather see Oklahoma be winning right now in the Big 12 than losing in the SEC. Art says, is the NIL fair for schools like us? Not really, but what is fair? You know what I mean? Now, the revenue sharing is supposed to help even the playing field a little bit. But you're still going to have players doing these NIL deals with outside entities. So NIL is not going to go away. There may not be as much of it, but it's not going to go away completely. Matthew, WVU Fan 13 says the move to the Big 12 has not been beneficial for WVU. Well, I don't know, man. It depends. If we had been left in the AAC, I don't know. It's a fair argument. From a fan's perspective, it probably hasn't, because we would have been more successful had we got left behind and stuck in the AAC, which was probably going to be our home when the Big East collapsed. We would have had more success, maybe even won some conference championships. Now, we wouldn't have made as much money, but would we as fans have? That's a great question that I don't really know if I have the answer to, because it's a hypothetical. Would I have rather West Virginia been winning more in the American than losing in the Big 12? That's a conundrum, isn't it? But I have enjoyed I've enjoyed the Big 12 to a degree. I mean, up until the last few years when Dana was Dana was the coach. We had the 10-win season. We had, the year with Will Greer and those guys, but even they let us down, right? They had a chance to go to the Big 12 title game and blew it, right? So I don't know. I've learned to love the Big 12, especially since I became a content creator, and I've really gotten to know a lot of the other Big 12 content creators and a lot of Big 12 fans. Some awesome people. So I'm probably a little bit biased, but in that regard. But as far as on the field and football and recruiting, I think it's hurt West Virginia's recruiting being in the Big 12 a little bit. And the travel, obviously the travel struggles that they've had early on, that they had earlier. Right now, that's not as big a deal because our other schools doing it too. But West Virginia was at such a huge disadvantage the first 10 years that it hurt them. It hurt them from a cost. They were spending more money on travel than anybody else in the conference. That's a great question, WV Myrtle Beach. I don't know the answer to that. I could look it up, but I don't have it in front of me. I would have to do the math and add all that together. I had it wrote down at one time, but I didn't save those notes. Matthew says he felt bad from 11 to 22 with you all being. Yeah, I mean, it sucked a little bit. But again, we got to play Oklahoma and Texas every year. That was pretty fun, especially the times we were able to beat Texas. There's been some really great memories of the Big 12 so far. It's hard because these last few years with Neal Brown have sucked the life out of our program and out of our fan base, man, to where it's just hard to remember the good days, It's hard to remember them, but we'll get back there again. May have to hire a new coach to do it, but we'll get back there again. Well, I don't really have anything else to talk about tonight. If you guys got anything else before I sign off here, if you want to shoot me a super chat, I'll be sure to get to it. Thank you all for helping in. We've got between X and YouTube, I've got over 700 people in here. This is awesome. One of my largest shows ever. I really appreciate everyone tuning in. I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to hit that thumbs up button on your way out. If you're watching this on the replay, do the same. Hit the thumbs up button. If you're watching on X, hit the heart, whatever. Really get this thing pumped out to more people. Hopefully introduce my channel to more people. CFB Plus, this video will be up as an on-demand video if you want to go back and check it out. I covered that in the very first part of the show, so you can go check it out once it's posted. So yeah, I really appreciate everybody tuning in. Shout out to my sponsors again, BetUS Online Sportsbook and Cass Cantor Stone Street and Buckner Attorneys at Law, your personal injury attorneys in West Virginia, Virginia. And also want to give a real quick shout out to WV Sports Now. For you West Virginia fans, Mike Ostie and the guys over at WV Sports Now, I'm partnering with them. You can sign up for their behind-the-scenes and ad-free content called The Holler. So go to WVSportsNow.com, go to The Holler, and at checkout, use promo code Couz, C-O-U-Z. You'll get a 40% discount on a one-year membership to The Holler. Be sure to take advantage of that now. I really, really appreciate that. Thanks to all of you who are tuned in. Thanks to all of you who have hit the like button. Thanks to all of you who have subscribed. Those of you who became new channel members. Thanks for the super chats. Hope y'all have a good rest of your night, or if you're watching the replay, maybe the rest of your day. Hope it's top shelf. Hope you're top shelf. Hope your family's top shelf. You country roads.